everyone. Welcome to Mystery Soaps and Such. Welcome back if you are an old fan, and welcome to all you newbies as well. I hope you are doing well, and I hope you enjoy this video. We're going to make a Winter Wonderland soap. It's been a little bit of time for me, so I'm getting my sea legs back, if you want to call it, and Mr. Soaps and Such and I are really excited about moving forward and doing more like weekly like we used to. So hopefully you'll see a lot more of us or a lot more from us or something like that. Starting off with Premium Crystal Clear from Wholesale Supplies Plus, Crafter's Choice. That is my soap of preference. That's my favorite soap, especially for art soaps. The clarity is everything to me when it comes to making art soaps. If you're trying to show a picture, you don't want to bury that picture in a soap that is kind of see-through-ish. You want it to really be clear. So there are some things you can do to help that along, but the best thing to do is start off with a soap that's really, really clear, and that is the Premium Crystal Clear. They also sell Extra Clear. That isn't more clear than Premium Crystal Clear, I promise you. I used to get that mixed up, and I know there are a few others of you have mentioned that before. You know, which one is the clearest? It's the Premium Crystal. That's the one you want if you want super clear. Definitely worth it, in my opinion. I have tested it. There is a slight difference. It's not drastic, but it's enough that if you're wanting to do art soaps, get the Premium Crystal Clear. Okay. And I'm not affiliated with Wholesale Supplies Plus, so they're not paying me to say this. It's just my favorite. You'll notice that I'm talking about clear, but I'm pouring white. Well, that is because it's very easy to make a white soap from the clear. If you could certainly use goat's milk or something else here if you'd rather. But I just added some titanium dioxide that I dispersed in glycerin. Now, this is a little bit more of a complicated soap. I certainly wouldn't consider it a beginner soap or a beginner project. So I'm going to treat it as such in my instructions. I'm not going to give every little detail of things I think you should probably already know at the stage of being able to do a soap like this. Obviously, I'm always willing to answer questions. So if you have any questions in the comments, please, let me know. I'll answer them. I also am going to ask for questions from you. I'll get back to that in a minute because I want to tell you what I was doing now. That I only poured about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch of soap there, the white, and then and the clear about less than that, obviously. But that clear had wasn't Sparkle Plenty. It was Snowflake Sparkle or something like that. It was a Nurture soap one. Usually I go Mad Micas, but I have this one and I wanted to finish using it. So that's what I put in that clear, and I swirled it in that little thin layer of soap. Swirling is quite easy when you're doing small layers. So give it a try. That's a good way to get a feel for it. It's much easier than doing it in thick layers. The timing and temperature get far more important the thicker the layer is. So that little piece, that white piece, will be pulled out later to become another embed. And please ignore the weird lump in my in my mold there at the very top. You see where the hot pink is peeking through? I don't know what caused it. I think I may have had a mold or a bit of something underneath there that I didn't realize was there while it was in storage. So I'm going to hopefully I only discovered it when I went to pour that in there and realized there was a big lump in my mold. So I'm going to try to fix that, and I'll let you know if anything I try works. But in the meantime, I'm pouring now Enchanted Forest by Mad Micas, which is my usual mica company, colorant company of choice. I am affiliated with them, but that's not because I don't shout them out and use their products because I'm affiliated with them. I am affiliated with them because I love their products. They're just really high quality, very ethical company. Your ethically sourced micas and cruelty free, all the good stuff from them. Several biodegradable products as well. They're very conscientious and they're very nice to work with. They're very cool people over there down there now. I used to be much closer to them when I lived in Florida, but now I'm in Iowa. And part of the reason you'll see me struggling a little bit here is because I'm in Iowa and it's a lot colder than I'm used to. So my temperatures and timing, etc., has changed quite a bit, and I haven't had enough practice with that yet. And I'm trying to make some alterations in what I do. The second colorant I poured there was Crazy Eyes Green, also from Mad Micas. Now, I like the Crazy Eyes better. It's kind of why I stopped pouring the Enchanted Forest. I love the Enchanted Forest. It's a beautiful color. I don't know how much you can tell on your screen, but the Enchanted Forest is a little bit of a softer color. Very frosty looking. I just love it. But I wanted a little bit more of a bold color palette for this because the bulk of this soap is going to be white and clear with little splashes of color here and there. So I wanted those splashes of color to be fairly vibrant. So I chose some vibrant colors instead. I didn't realize how soft the Enchanted Forest was till I poured it in that little mold. I do end up using what I poured, most of it, with that. And the little bit that's left over, I obviously will use that in some type of remake or scrap soap or something. I always use my scraps. You saw the overpour there with the white. What a mess I made. If you don't know me, if you're new to my channel, I'm a mess. I make messes. Art is messy, and so am I. I'm kind of an organized messy, but I'm messy. That's hard to. When I'm done with this, you'll see me kind of pull up the white that poured out over the mold. I was in a big rush when I was doing it. Again, afraid of temperature, dropping the temperature of the soap too low, so that it wouldn't fill in those teeny tiny molds. When you're using tiny molds, you've got to pour hot or you're going to have trouble. You also want to spritz it first so you don't get any air bubbles. These molds I'm pouring in now are intricate and delicate, but not nearly as much as the Snowflakes, as you'll see in a few minutes. Normally I would have, if I'd had a little more time, I would have scraped this white part here off while it was still quite hot. You'd have to have the scraper in your hands and ready to go pour and scrape. Because if you let it sit and it gets a skin, if you let it sit just for a second and it gets a skin on it, you're going to pull most of the soap out of the little itty bitty cavities there, and you won't end up with a full embed. And in ones this delicate, that makes it really tricky to work with. So I went the hard route and I'm scraping it off by hand. It was a pain in the neck. Even I do that sometimes, but I get a thinner layer that I'm scraping off. If you scrape it with a little scraping tool, only scrape once. And if you leave some there, it's okay. You can do this and it doesn't take that long. But if you don't scrape any off, then you're scraping for quite a while. You see me wiping that off, and that can be reused in a variety of different ways. That it is a lot of titanium dioxide and glycerin because that's how I disperse my titanium dioxide. And it can be incorporated into another soap if you save it and preserve it. It's kind of almost like a soft paste right now, so you don't just want to, I don't know. So you want to put it somewhere. Put it in a little baggie is what I like to do. Anyway, so you see me painstakingly doing that for way too long. I sped it up, but I probably just should have cut it out. But, hindsight is 20/20. And I'm just going to have to talk over it. You will see in a moment when I get the one scraped and then I pick up the other and start scraping. I also clean it off. You want it extremely clean for the technique I'm using. And this is only one technique to get these little teeny tiny embeds out of this mold. This is kind of one of my favorite tricks. I've shown it before in my Flurries soap. And you might, if you haven't seen that one, you might want to give it a watch because it will show you a little bit more detail this technique that I'm doing. But once I get it all scraped from both of those molds and wipe it, I'm going to wipe it by spritzing it with rubbing alcohol. If you see me spritzing anything with a little spray bottle, it's going to be rubbing alcohol. For this, I'm using, for when I'm creating a soap, I'm usually using 91%. I use 70% for sanitizing because that's what you do. It sounds kind of backward, but 70% has enough water in it that it is going to keep the alcohol on the surface long enough to kill anything that's on there. So it's better. If you do 91%, it disperses too quickly to kill the microbes and whatever else might be hanging around. I mean, there shouldn't be much of anything because I clean them first, but you never want to, you don't want to chance it. But the 91% is quite effective for popping bubbles, for getting off extra soap off of the surface like this. I've just used, like I showed you, right there in a little spray bottle, 91% rubbing alcohol, and I'm wiping that with a paper towel. You can use whatever you like, a lint-free cloth, something like that. I'm using a paper towel. And there's the second one. You'll see it really cleans that surface. It just makes sure there's no white residue on the surrounding bits. You want the pink to look pretty clear because you're about to pour, I think, I'm about to pour some clear soap on top of that. Yeah, that's what I'm getting ready to do. And yes, I do fragrance the whole soap. Sometimes I will fragrance parts of it lighter than others. But I think for this, I just did basically 1% across the board. My fragrance that I'm using is called North Pole, and that is a wholesale supplies plus fragrance. Let me backtrack just for a second because I want to talk about the other colorants I've used. I got so sidetracked from the Snowflakes there that I didn't didn't tell you the other colors I was using. After Crazy Eyes, which is that really brilliant green, I went to a beautiful, beautiful aqua, which is Blue Tide, also by Micas. And then the blue after that was Key West Blue, also from Micas. And if I didn't already tell you, there's an affiliate link in my description box. And if you purchase through that link from Micas, I will receive a small commission. And I literally don't remember if I've said that because I had to start this over again. So I know I've said it at one point. I just don't remember if I said it in this video yet. But there it is. I think I did now that I'm thinking about it. Oh, well, you got to hear it twice. So all the embeds have now, I believe, been poured. I come back later, I think, and pour an extra Christmas tree. As you see that little kind of gray mold there that has the Christmas tree in it. There, the one I picked up right now. Wow, what do you know? That is the only actual Christmas tree mold that I'm using. But there's a ton of Christmas trees in this soap. How can that be, Miss Terry? How can you? Well, you can make Christmas trees out of leaves. If you use them, it's just all about the perspective and how you use them, how you decorate them, how you cut them, a variety of things. It's an image. It's what's the word? It's an indication of a Christmas tree. If you color them fall colors, they're going to look like leaves. If you color them, I know blue is kind of weird, I know, but this is kind of a fantasy soap, fantasy colored soap. That's why I was going for those bold colors. I wanted it to look like a fantasy walk in the snow, just a little, I don't know, a little, not quite Dr. Seuss. They do have a couple of trees. That's what made me think of that look like Dr. Seuss trees. but I wanted it to be a little whimsical. So here I'm pulling out that little, the big but thin embed that I created there. And in a moment, you will see what I'm going to do with that. But also, just to kind of backtrack about the trees, you'll see as I go how I make them look a little bit more like trees and less like leaves. Some of it is just, like I said, the colorants and the context in which you're using them. If I had a branch next to it, it might look more like a leaf than a tree. So you'll see me cutting some wave shapes out of this soap, out of this little thin layer. Please find yourself a ruler, a straight edge, something like that for the straight lines instead of what I'm about to do. It worked for me, but I don't recommend it. Do as I say and not as I do. I'm using the edge of the soap for a straight edge. I don't know why. It was there. It was quick, and so I got it and I used it, and it actually worked just fine. But I did just score that line. I didn't cut all the way through. So I go back and carefully kind of score a little deeper each time until it goes through. I tried to be, and you might want to as well, a little careful on my surface there. Usually my surface for making soaps is going to be a silicone mat. Sometimes that's because I'm pouring soap directly onto the silicone mat and using that. In this case, I don't believe I do that anywhere intentionally other than my spills of soap, which I also do. But if you're creating something like this, just be careful that if your knife goes through the soap and presses real hard on that silicone mat, you're going to cut it up. So either put a cutting board underneath, which is what I usually do, and did not for this one, or just score lightly, kind of like I'm doing here, and then go back and you take it a little deeper and just be gentle with how that knife touches the mat. You'll notice that I'm doing 2 different sizes of waves. You'll also notice I'm not using any kind of a template. I'm just freehanding things. You could certainly cut yourself. You could certainly draw and cut out, or even download from somewhere a little template with a wavy line if you want. I don't have any of those for offer right now, but it's just a wavy line. So it's not that hard. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is art. These are art soaps, and in my opinion, if you have perfect art, you don't have art. It should be, I don't know, spontaneous. I'm a perfectionist too. So this is coming from a perfectionist. It doesn't have to be perfect. That should say something to you. The lines actually look better if it's not perfect, in my opinion. That's the way I see it. So I just kind of did some squiggles on the larger ones I'm making, because I said I'm making 2 sizes. I wanted the waves to be a little less wavy, a little less deep. So they're a little shallower, and then the smaller ones are a little bit more curvy. And you'll see the look that gives you when you see me put it together, and I'll explain more when we get to that. Now, and this is really not the order I would normally do this in for a video. Normally, I would have had all of these embeds made ahead of time and would have made a video about making these embeds. And then I would have had a separate video of putting it all together. That's a lot easier in so many ways. But I didn't. So sorry. I'm kind of, in doing it all at once, I'm having to save myself some time, which is why I did that. I poured that white and then went back to the embeds, and then I do something else and then I go back to the embeds. So, just trying to, not stand around waiting for soap to dry. So this little layer here, this now is actually going to be the back layer of the soap. I'm bringing the soap, making the soap from the back forward, as I like to do in my landscape soaps. You can certainly do them upside down, But in this soap, I don't think it would work as well. You'd lose sight of some things and not really be able to see what you're doing. It works in many cases, but it was not my choice for this. Here I'm employing my marbling technique, which is basically you pour a little bit, a thin layer, between an eighth and a quarter inch, a little bit more than that white layer I did, which was more going to be cut up. This one is not going to be cut up until I cut the bars of soap. So I like to give myself between an eighth of an inch and a quarter of an inch to work. It's not so much that soap has the colored soap that I strung in there. Slung, that's the word. I sling soap. Sometimes I forget what I do. I sling soap for a living. But slinging those colors in there like that, it's just a tiny amount of color or a tiny amount of soap with quite a bit of mica. As you'll see, I make those a little bit strong, but it works because it is just a small amount of soap in there. That's not the whole soap getting mica everywhere. And the colorants I used in that were the Crazy Eyes, same Crazy Eyes green. I just remelted a little bit of that. And the blue, I believe, was the Key West blue again. I kind of wanted to make the colors sort of match. What I'm doing with that little layered, even though I'm back to kind of getting some embeds out and trimming them, I'm going to still talk about the marbling technique because what I was going for there is kind of a Northern Lights look. Even though it's not a soap in the nighttime, kind of a Northern Lights-ish, or what do they call them? The rainbow clouds, something. I wanted some color and, like I said, whimsical kind of look in the background. So the sky has some swirls of color in it. And I wanted the sky to mostly be clear with that. Instead of my usual, I would have done a blue background and have that be the sky and maybe swirl 2 colors of blue or swirl in some white clouds or something. But this was the route I took this time. And I think it came out really neat. It's kind of hard to show in the end. You'll see a little bit more about that. But that's the choice I made. I did the blue and the green in a separate layer. And I come back later in the next layer of clear and I do pour a little bit of a pinkish red. VOODOO red or VOODOO pink. I don't know which they call it, but it's kind of both. From Mad Micas. That's one of my favorites. I use Flirt a lot, which is also one of their colorants. It's a little bit more toward the pink or purplish side, or magenta, something like that. Anyway, I wanted I wanted this one to have a little bit more red in it, so that's what I chose this time. I was struggling a little bit to get some of those leaves out because it is a really flat mold, those little ones that were the Enchanted Forest. And I got most of them out. I kind of gave up on a couple because I felt like I was wasting time. So I pulled out most of them, and some I just left in a pile in the corner there. I would have had to cut around them, and I didn't feel like doing it, and I felt like I had enough of the little leaves for my trees. And so I just left them. This was a very long, tedious video to make. We were so tired by the time we were done with this, Mr. Soaps and such and I. We were just like, please just stop, get it done. And I love making soaps like this, but it was just one of those that just kept dragging on and on. As you will see, you saw me hold it over the pink there. I just wanted you to be able to see the detail a little bit better on those snowflakes. Because with a lighter background, it's hard to see that. So I held it over the darker background. And notice here as I'm unmolding that's with the clear on the top. So that's what they're sticking to, almost like a little set of stickers. See that? Isn't that cool? I was bending the mold back, not the soap. That is a really helpful way when you're working with delicate embeds to not break them or have them peel off of the clear, or just destroy them in some other way to keep it all intact. Bend the mold, not the soap when you're dealing with little bitty thin things like this and delicate embeds of any kind, really. So here like I said, this is just one way to incorporate little tiny delicate embeds into your soap. I have a couple others I'll be doing. Probably not with the snowflakes again because it's snowflake season isn't going to be here that much longer, although we are supposed to get some serious snow tomorrow and maybe Saturday here in Iowa where I am. So if you don't see me for a few days, that's why. I'm just cutting around the little shapes. And yeah, I'm kind of leaving the majority of that clear there. If you're careful when you're embedding them, and you'll see I'm not super careful and it still works, you don't really see that clear. Because it's the same exact clear that you're using in the rest of the soap. That's one of the reasons I also fragrance it at the same time I'm doing the others, and at the same percentage. I do it at 1% across the board for this one. And it just kind of masks it when you put it in there, unless you put it in over top of a thin layer already forming, and then you're going to see, you may see the edges or bubbles. And you'll see I got some bubbles in this. I got quite a bit of bubbles, more than I usually like to do. But again, being in a colder temperature makes that skin happen a lot faster. But it kind of went with the look of the snow and the fun curly, colorful clouds. So I didn't worry too much about it because I still thought it looked cool. I used to stress so much over things like that. And who has time? Who has energy to stress over little bubbles in your soap? I don't anymore. So I just cut around each one. If there was a big piece sticking off the corner, I might have cut that off here and there. But at some point, I will show you another technique to do all that. And right now, it's kind of cut off. And I'm really sorry about that. Like I said, I didn't have much room on that table because I didn't do them separately. I should have. But I'm just taking that little spatula thingy there, and I'm just dipping it in the white soap and drizzling a little bit or guiding a little bit onto the tip of each leaf. I do them each in a different way. Sometimes I did diagonal little stripes. Sometimes I just kind of rubbed a little white color on there, and I just mostly focused on the top half or less. You could dip them. You could dip the tops in. I didn't want, to me, that would look a little bit too uniform, and I didn't want that to be uniform. So I kind of did the tedious way and made some little stripes and just little bits. But again, doesn't have to be perfect because some of mine are really messy and sloppy, and it all looks okay. Some of it just looks globby. But when you see the overall picture of it, and in each individual soap too, it all looks okay. In fact, more than okay. It looks really good. So, don't stress yourself over things like that. Just put a little snow on there. It's just white soap. It's just soap with clear soap with titanium dioxide. I pre-mix mine usually about half and half with the glycerin, the titanium dioxide. Sometimes I add more titanium dioxide if it seems a little too thin. And then I just add a little bit into my soap until I like the opacity. Till I like the how white it is, So I did this one fairly white because I didn't want the snow to be see-through. So I put in quite a bit of titanium dioxide. I use the water-based type. That's what makes it easy to disperse in glycerin. Some people disperse it in other things. You're welcome to try whatever you like. I use glycerin for that, and for I also use glycerin for activated charcoal, which is not in this soap at all. But I just thought I should mention it. I do, real quick mention here, I've got a yellow spatula in that clear soap. Notice how yellow it makes the soap look in the bucket. That is not the soap. That is and it's not the fragrance oil, is definitely the spatula casting a reflection in that soap and coloring it a little bit. This fragrance oil does discolor a tiny bit in Melt and Pour, just a little bit. It didn't at first. You'll see the pictures and everything at the end here looks beautiful, but by, I don't know, by a couple months later, it was a little bit less. It wasn't less clear. It's hard to say. It was still clear. It wasn't fuzzy. It wasn't foggy. It just wasn't perfectly clear. It was a little. I won't say it was yellowish because I think it was a little bit more pink in the tint. It still looked cool anyway. That happens sometimes. Fragrance oil doesn't just yellow or brown, and it's not only vanilla. This has no vanillin in it at all, or vanillin, whatever way you pronounce it. I've heard a lot of different things. But it can discolor pink. It can discolor green. I've seen both of those too, although yellow is more common. So here go those little. Now you see, maybe you can see what I'm doing with those little strips I made earlier. I'm kind of gonna call this my. I'm thinking of how to term it, but I get the image of children's theater. Now, I've seen children's theater. I've done children's theater and directed it, where there's full professional, Broadway looking set pieces. It just depends on your resources and what you have. But I've also seen children's productions where they've got cardboard cutout pieces, little cardboard cutout bushes and houses and whatever pieces you're making, because they may not have that much of a budget. And also, so the children, if they're needing to help with set changes, can do that and not have to worry about picking up some heavy wooden flat, or rolling something big, or anyway, that is a common thing in children's theater. And that's what putting this together reminds me of. I think you'll get a clearer image of that when you see the next layer being added after I get the trees in. But as you see, quick note, try to make sure the snow goes up, points upward and not into the ground. I only had one that did it, and I tried to fix it, and it was too late. Maybe you saw me struggling with that. It's already in there. It's a little blue one. And I left it because unless you're looking for it, you're probably not going to notice it. But typically the snow falls on top of the trees and not underneath it, or from the bottom up. So that's that. Something to think about. It's a little harder to think about when you keep switching sides like I do. I keep flipping it from one side to another. That's because, again, my table isn't quite level, and I want my soap to be fairly level. So if you just switch back and forth, the layers kind of even out, and it ends up to be a mostly level soap. So that's why you see me doing that. Right now, I think I'm making more. Oh, yeah. I'm going to do another clear layer. And with this clear layer, I add a little bit more colorant. Mostly because I wanted that first layer of snow drifts, if you can kind of see the picture coming together, to have a little bit of color on them. Kind of like it's reflecting the sky a little, because snow does reflect things, color and light. And so I thought, why not put a little bit there? I didn't continue adding color after that because I didn't want it to get muddy, and I didn't want it to cover up the picture too much and make it not really busy. Wasn't the look. It is kind of a busy soap, but it was more about clarity, just wanting to keep the front layers a little bit clearer. So I didn't go for adding little bits of mica like I'm doing here. These are just micas, the same micas I used in the first two layers, which are Crazy Eyes Green, VOODOO Red or Pink, and the Key West Blue. And I just a tiny bit. I really just used a little. And then you see me having to play with it because it didn't go where I wanted to. The marbling technique, where I go and pour a little bit of color, and then I use clear soap to move it. And sometimes a stick. You'll see me, dragging it around with a stick too. You can't control it perfectly. And I do love soaps like that where you can't perfectly control everything, because it's kind of the fun of it, of art. You get what you get sometimes. There are different techniques and ways you can learn to control it a little bit better than when you're starting, but you can't force the soap to go somewhere through just pouring more soap or the stick. It's not going to do what you want it to. But it's fun. I think that makes it a little bit fun. Anyway, that's why I was trying to play with it, is to get more of the color back up on the white and less in the sky, because it already has some in the sky. Either way, you see a couple of these when you watch me lay down a little embed there. You might see it, the skin, where the skin is developing, it like a little web almost. So if you set it down and it's not right where you want it, try not to mess with it. If you twist it, and I know you'll see me do that here a couple of times, if you move it or you twist it, you're going to create bubbles and lines and weird things. Not the end of the world, because like I said, this still ends up being super cute, even though that the layer of setups, the skin that develops on the top, was happening much faster than I'm used to, and that made me struggle a little. It still, like I said, ended up being pretty darn cute. And you'll, in the close-ups in the end, you'll definitely see where it happens, and I think you'll still like them. I do. And I'm really picky, and I sometimes don't like my soaps until I have a chance to sit with them for a while. Why am I cutting snowflakes in half, you might be wondering. If you haven't seen my arachnophobia and Gone Batty videos, go check those out too. I talk a little bit more about this in creating a design like this that already is going to be cut up. It's more of a full picture if you see half of something. And that sounds weird because it's like not a full picture, but it is. If you take a picture with a camera, unless you do those great big, I don't know, those panoramic kind of pictures, and even if you do, there's an end to it. There's going to be an end, and you're not going to be able to capture everything unless you're spinning around in a video or something. But as a photo, you're capturing part of something, and that's what this shows. You might catch half of a snowflake or half of a tree in your picture because there's a finite area that you're photographing. And so that's kind of why I do this. I like the way it works as a design element. It makes it feel more complete than just sticking a bunch of embeds in the center, or, you know, cramming a bunch in and they're all perfectly whole. It just, I don't know. For me, it makes it a better design. Obviously, you can do your design however you like. You could perfectly place one tree in the center of each bar and one snowflake, and it would probably still be a really cool soap. But I kind of have to go for many trees and many snowflakes and half trees, because that's just me. But going in a slab mold like this, it's kind of fun because you can do whatever you want. The placement, I'll say, is I'm just layering. I'm just adding more trees and more snowflakes and more hot soap and layering these things. So as I'm doing that, let me just tell you the placement of those three white embeds, the big strips of white that are kind of look like hills or snowdrifts. Those are placed, obviously the first one was up against the bottom edge as best I could. And then I went with the little markings. My mold happened to have markings for places to cut. I don't know if you can see them in this video. I think you can. If your mold doesn't, though, get out a Sharpie. Get out a Sharpie and measure, where you want those bars to be cut. And just put it on the very edge so you can see how you're placing things. It makes it a million times easier than guessing, I promise you. But this one, I was really thrilled that it had the markings on it, because it's helpful. But, if you do the Sharpie, you might have to redo it every so often, because when you spritz with alcohol, it's going to remove it if you're not careful, or, you might get like 3 or 4 uses before they're gone, maybe even 5 or 6. I don't know. Depends on how much you spray with alcohol. I tend to go light on it. Okay, so now you see it coming together with my opinion of like what looks like a children's theater set. There's the front half of that embed, and it creates a really 3D image, and I think it's what makes the picture. I know the snowflakes are the coolest, and the trees are colorful, but I think the image comes out best because of the 2 layers of snowdrifts. I keep wanting to say sand dunes because, again, I'm from Florida. But there's no palm trees here, so those aren't sand dunes. Now, you could. There's an idea. There's a challenge for you. Who's going to create sand dunes on a beach with a bunch of palm trees? And maybe some seagrass or sea oats, that kind of stuff. Anyway, there's an idea for you and maybe for me. But this one is snowdrifts. And I like the way the color in the back gives a little bit, to me, that gives a little bit more dimension. It gives it more depth away from the front ones. It gives it the illusion of being farther away. And as does the variety of sizes of trees. If you notice, I had some that were teeny, teeny, tiny, and I put them way at the back. Because the further back something is, in your long-term field of vision, if you're looking out over a real snowscape, they're going to be small because you're not up close to them. So anyway, that's another way to kind of create visual interest and depth in a landscape soap is by size of things. And here I'm just making little marks with my knife where the marks in the soap mold were. So that gives me, once I remove it from the mold, I still have where those marks were and can cut it. I didn't bother on the sides where the little drifts were because that's my line. And you'll see I do have to, because I'm not perfect, and I didn't make them perfect, and I didn't use a straight edge to cut the bottom edge, so it wasn't perfect. I did end up using my double-handled cheese knife there, which is what I cut my slab molds with, to just trim it a little bit, and it didn't go to waste. Those are definitely set aside for embeds for future use. I'm not sure if I'm going to chop them up tiny or remelt them. I don't know what I'm going to do. Just a quick note, if you are liking to remelt your soaps, your scraps and stuff like that, do it sooner than later. It's harder to do when it gets a little older and dries out. And it will dry up faster. It will set up faster. It's just not as good of a use of your leftovers. But using them right away, they should be fine. Anyway, here comes my bad cutting job. I'm not great at cutting. I get the job done, but I'm not great at it. You'll see in one of these here where I line that knife up, I didn't even notice. This is how tired I was. Didn't even notice that they were like spread apart and not, I think it's the last cut that I make, not really lined up at all. But they were all cute though. And none of them really individually, when you're looking at them, look really crooked or anything. They're just, I just looked at that and watched the video back and I was like, you could do better than that, Terry. But here it comes. It's this one. Like I line it up and then I knock it off placement a little bit or something happens. See, they're not lined up, but it works. And they're all rectangular shaped soaps, basically. I don't show you, I don't think I show in this one. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't show me beveling. It's a long video. There's a lot going on. I'm just getting back into the game after a long break. And I was just hoping I could talk my way through this. So I didn't want to drag it on even further. I just used a vegetable peeler. Obviously not one I used for vegetables first. And I just trimmed the front sides. I didn't do the whole thing. I've done both, and I think for this one it was just fine to kind of frame it a little bit. You'll see me kind of moving these all around. I'm struggling at this point to kind of see or let the camera see those snowflakes. The light kind of picks it up and kind of doesn't. And at the same time, I also wanted you to be able to see the color. Now, this one has a lot more color in the background than the others, so that really kind of pops out. But sometimes it's a little bit more subtle in some of them. And it's still really pretty in person, but boy, is it hard to see on camera. So you'll see in a minute, at the very end of me trying to show these to you, I finally realized, oh, you can see the snowflakes if I put my hand behind it because it's clear and you can see. So I should have probably had both a dark and a light background there, but I didn't. So you kind of see me struggling to catch the light just right. In my light box pictures, you will see that I did both. I did some with my hand behind and some without. And I did it in the way I lined it up. I did the same soap so you can see, oh, there's the snowflake. And there's the same soap without my hand behind it. And it just kind of shows you the clarity and the placement of the snowflakes and how delicate they are, because boy, are they delicate. And you really, you can also tell in here, you don't see the little clear part where I cut around them. You don't really see it that much. You see it on occasion, like I said, where I messed up and put it down on a layer where it had already started developing a skin. That's where it shows up, but mostly not. I was very happy with the overall look. And there, I'm like, oh, look, I see my fingers. I was trying to pull them down at first. I'm like, wait a minute. That shows the snowflakes. So I'll put them back up in a second, I think, to show. Yeah, I'm like, wait. So you can kind of see the snowflakes a little bit better when I do that. As the Lightbox pictures come up, I just want to thank you so much for being with me here today. I have a membership now, just the first level. Click the join button if you want to hang around for some fun stuff. There'll be a lot more goodies down the road with that. And please like and subscribe. And thanks so much. I really appreciate having you here. I think there'll be a lot more soaps in your future if you stick around. And maybe you heard my cat just now. He said goodbye too. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.